Welcome to today's 5 Good Minutes on the 10 Commandments. Today we'll be considering the 7th commandment with Kurt Bjorklund.
The commandment, you shall not commit adultery, has a lot of examples in the Bible. Here's another one. Joseph was tempted with Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife is not named. She's just Potiphar's wife. And in Genesis 39, we're said, now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard in Egypt, had brought him from the Ishmaelites, who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became successful. And he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord had caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and he attended him, and he made him the overseer of his house, and he put in charge of him all that he had. And from the time that he had made him the overseer in his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and the field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food that he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, meaning he was jacked. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And I think we see here the importance of asking some key questions when we're tempted. Verse 9, is this a sin? How can I do this great sin and sin against God? Is what I'm considering doing wrong? And if it is, understand that too. What are the consequences? Verse 7, here he just says, the master's wife cast her eyes on him and said, "Lie with me." And if he does this, he betrays the trust of his master. He ends up going to jail anyway in this, but it really showed that he understood that there would be consequences. And then we see this question in a sense, and that is, will this satisfy me or simply stir up bigger desires? Is this something that if I do this will ultimately have me say, there, I am sexually fulfilled? Or will it simply lead me to say, I need more and more? And then the great question that is in verse 9, how can I do this great evil or this great wickedness and sin against God? Your sin, my sin, is ultimately against a person, but it's ultimately also against God. And so we want to learn to be decisive, like Joseph ran out of the room, to be principled, to know that sometimes we can't stay in an environment when we are in a time where something is difficult. You know, you might be in a place where you have somebody like a Mrs. Potiphar that you work with that's around you that is constantly saying, "Hey, let's hang out, let's do this." And putting distance between yourself and that man or woman is probably the wise thing to do, and you will be tempted to come up with all kinds of reasons why you don't need to have distance, that you can handle it, that you are strong. But what you may be doing is staying in the room with Mrs. Potiphar day after day after day. Now, it doesn't mean that you'll give into it, but notice Joseph's definitiveness in his choice to say, I have to get out of here. I cannot stay here. And part of it, I think, is that Joseph probably understood just his own temptation. I mean, we don't know what Mrs. Potiphar was like as a person or if what she looked like, but in that culture, it's likely that she had come to that position with some attraction. She had wealth, so she was able to take care of herself in some ways, not be a person who was constantly working. In other words, there was probably some attraction, and Joseph was saying, in essence, I must not be in a place where I'm even confronted with this anymore. Where are you tempted? And are you willing to say, I will walk away from this temptation in my life?
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out all our content and podcasts on Orchard Hill Plus. You can find that and so much more on our website or the Orchard Hill app.